So we will first have Pritha present, and Pritha she has her PhD from the Department of Cultural Studies at IFLU in Hyderabad. Pritha has been teaching film studies, journalism at Symbiosis International deemed university. And she's also been teaching since 2020. She's also been teaching as faculty associate at Krea at CWP, where she's taught writing and oral communication. And from what Ananya tells me, hugely enjoying it, right? Pritha has also been teaching creative writing and research methodology at various institutes of Symbiosis, also involved in doing writing workshops for research scholars at HCU and Ambedkar University in Delhi with Ananya, right? So thank you, Pritha, and over to you. Pritha's presentation is titled The Animate Life of PPTs, Reclaiming a Much-Maligned Teaching Tool. Over to you, Pritha.
Thank you, Madhura. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah. Okay, so before anything else, I would just like to say that this is a huge opportunity for me for the last 2 days. Like I have consciously, as well as in a sense, sometimes have been forced to attend some of these pedagogy workshops or like seminars. And I must be honest that most of the time they are a lot of people talk a lot, they use a lot of keywords, but I don't really get anything out of it. But this particular this entire seminar has been like miraculously insightful. Like they have absolutely so much to think about, but I'm not going to waste much time, and I will go right into what I have to say. So when Ananya asked me to do a paper, I was just thinking that what should I do? And she asked me to think about the correlation between the academic writing and creative writing courses that I was teaching. And while thinking about that, there's one thing which I could not get out of my head, and that was, PPT. And I know it's something that we all look down upon, and I've also had my share of gigs in the industry and all, where PPTs are, let's face it, like not looked upon kindly in the academic circuits. And whether it be from the students, they only need the PPT the night before the exam so that they can mug up some of the stuff. And teachers also, in a lot of sense, we use it as cues. And often there is this entire issue of overcrowding with text and different sorts of things for which people are not really very open to the use of PPT, or the fact that it can be used as a very strategic tool in an writing class, and especially an online writing class. So one of the things I would like to examine here is basically how my PPTs changed. And this change happened very ceremoniously over the boot camp that Ananya had organized at CWP Krea last year. I will take you through that. But before that, I just wanted to say that when I started looking at how I'm going to go about writing something about the PPTs, the first things that I came are these really negative opinions about it. And I knew people are not happy about PPT, but I didn't know about these very exciting terms like presentation zombification and death by PowerPoint and PowerPoint poisoning. So I hope that now that I'm going to take you through a PPT, I do not indulge in any of them. And on that note, I would also like to introduce the topics that I will be covering. So one is, of course, just to look at slightly uh, in terms of how and why the PPT is maligned. And also look at the different ways in which the PPTs can be used or have been used in this case in an online writing classroom. And also to think about what allows the PPT to work in an online writing classroom. And finally, of course, as my title says, reclaim the PPT. So the entire question of the title, which says the animate life of PPT, I must admit it did not come from me. It came from Ananya. In fact, the title came before I finalized the abstract. I had just told her that this is something I have in mind. I'm writing something on these lines, and she came up with the title. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was using words like, the active space and the space coming alive and all of these things. But I think when I looked at the meaning, looked up the definition of the word animate, it made a lot of like sense. Like it actually said in one word all the things that I was trying to say. So thank you, Ananya, for that. And especially, I would like to point to the last definition here, which is to fill with spirit, courage, or resolution, and in turn encourage, because we never think about PPTs like that. And I don't know, maybe in a sense, this might have worked where, because the feedbacks did come back saying that there were a lot of difference in terms of how the PPTs made a difference in the way the classes were taught from the students, which I'll take you through later. So what I would like to argue through this presentation is that, what allows the PPTs to work in an online classroom vis-a-vis an offline classroom is to a certain extent due to the intimacy provided by the private screen. Like when we are looking at a like classroom scenario where there's the big screen out there, uh, the kind of the reason we don't put too much of materials, the reason we literally use points is precisely because people can't read it. But the moment we are looking at like a private screen, which of course is a matter of privilege, and we all know that, acknowledging that when we are actually doing an online class, the intimacy that is provided by this private screen, it sort of allowed the PPT to be turned into an active space of participation. This is my observation from the kind of PPTs that we were using at CWP, and which I later went on to adapt to my creative writing classes as well. So, one second. Yeah. So this is a PPT here, you can see, which is a here is a cartoon or of sorts, which tells us that sort of puts in one sentence what the problem of PPT is. And since all of you are teachers and all of you have been working with PPTs in some encountered PPTs in some form or the other, I would want you to uh, switch on your mic and just tell me like one word to describe a PPT. What would that be? Quickly, if I could have some audience participation here.
Intimidating.
Intimidating. Thank you.
Keywords?
Yeah, just one word. Intimidating.
Keyword. I can say busy or overwhelming.
Busy. Keyword. Overwhelming.
Though I must admit, I am a PPT advocate. So, but even then, I find.
Anything else?
Text heavy.
Text heavy. Okay.
Same, Madhura. I find it intimidating because it seems so important.
Okay, but it's
I was going to say an aid.
Aid. Yeah, that's true. So all of these, if we see, this is how we look at PPT also, because how PPT appears to us in the classroom, right? Like there is one stage where as teachers, we are making the PPT. And then there's that second stage where we are standing up in the classroom and presenting the PPT. And if we put ourselves in the shoes of the students, or when we have all been in their position also, where we have looked at PPTs, I felt that one of the things that really struck me about a PowerPoint is the passive nature of it. It's just there. It's just, doing something and just seeing something. There is no participation. But as you saw right now, I just gathered everything that you have to say about PPT, what you feel about PPT, and put it on a PPT. So, which in turn actually does away with one of the problems that I think is there, The intimidation probably comes from there also. The overwhelming nature of it also comes from there. That it's not something where we have a say. It's something that is telling us to do things. So this is a method which I learned, and I will talk about how I learned later, and which also brings me to some of these, like, really kind of opinions and as well as academic articles which have been written, which tells us the problems about PPT. I have two quotes here. One is from an academic article. It's an essay where this gentleman called Toft, he writes about, what he does this, extensive research. On the basis of that, he comes to the conclusion that how the PowerPoints have, they have reduced the analytical quality of serious presentation of evidence, how it has corrupted statistical reasoning, the templates, and how it has weakened verbal and spatial thinking. And another thing I found was an email that Jeff Bezos had.
Sorry, Pritha, can I interrupt you? Can you just make it full screen so that everyone else can see?
Sure. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so this second one is from an email that Jeff Bezos wrote to the Amazon employees a couple of years ago, where he said that, I want to ban PPT in the office because in fact, what he said is that I want narratives, I don't want PowerPoint presentation. And one of the sentences in the mail say that PowerPoint style presentation somehow give permission to gloss over ideas, flatten out any sense of relative importance, and ignore the interconnectedness of ideas. So all these things that I have highlighted here, and you can see that I've put them out in a block. What I felt is that what this particular slide allows me to do is to connect an academic article to an email sent by a millionaire to his office people, and pick out what are the connections between these two quotes and present it to you in a structured way. So in that sense, even though Bezos is of the opinion that a PPT ignores the interconnectedness of ideas, as you can see here, it is actually helping us do that, make that connection, which we know is the precondition for writing, which we also know is what reading is all about. And to go back to the title of this slide, to learn to write is to learn to read, which is something we have been talking about since last sessions, also last panel session also. So this brings me to the PPT that changed my life. I have taken Ananya's permission to share this. This is how the PPT looked. It was one of the third day of the WOC, the Writing and Oral Communication Boot Camp that she held for all the tutors and the instructors. And here we had there was this slide, and I was like, and I came from on one hand industry, on the other hand Symbiosis, where I was making these like really heavily templated looking something that can be sent to the client, kind of client ready presentations. And I looked at this slide and I'm like, okay, can we actually make slides like this? What is this? Like, I don't know if it might be a common practice in writing circuits, writing pedagogy circuits. For me, it was a shock. I'll be very honest with you. I didn't know that PPTs could be made like this. And I was like, does it look incomplete? What is happening? And then slowly I paid attention to it and I saw, okay, this is actually doing a brilliant job in telling me whatever this entire slide is about, the entire presentation is about. And it is from the very title slide itself, the presenter is giving me a complete overview of whatever she wants to do in the rest of the presentation. Then this is one of the inner slides in that presentation that was there. This is one of the essays that we were teaching our students also, where there were many other paragraphs that we were reading. So this is a traditional worksheet method of close reading the paragraph, which Ananya took on a PPT. And if you can see, what she has done is that she has taken up this one paragraph, which has a block quote, and she highlighted the claim section. And then she wrote out that, what is happening in this paragraph. And she took us through it. And there is so much of text on it, but it did not feel overwhelming. In fact, it just made it so much clearer by bringing focus onto what actually I needed to know, despite the fact that there was so much text on it. When explained, it did not seem like that, because at the end of the day, it's less text than the essay that I am reading, right? From where this paragraph is being picked, from where it is being presented, and then explained and broken down in terms of, like, the functions of the sentences and all of the details that are there. So this is how she taught us close reading. This was one of my first encounters with how to do close reading in the CWP boot camp. So once I learned this, I wanted to implement it, of course. And this is something which I took. This is a example from one of the slides that I used in my CWP course itself, the WOC course, the Writing and Oral Communication course at Krea. And what I have here is basically, I gave a question to the students. I asked them to put the answers in the chat box. From there, we picked up two particular examples, and we put it right here in the class, while in the class. And alongside it, this part, the right side of the slide was already there. I had already put up the paragraph which will give the answer to that question. The paragraph which will help, or rather the paragraph which will help them think about the answer to the question without highlighting the exact section. So what the students did is that they saw the question, they read this paragraph, and they wrote the answer. I picked up two of them, anonymized them, and put it up on the slide while in class, and also highlighted the section in the text which gives the answer, which helps them reach this answer that they have reached. So on one hand, it drived student participation. It helped me review students' work. It helped me point the attention to the section in the given text, which will help them find the answer. And of course, do the close reading that was there. There were several other instances in the academic writing, how basically the worksheet stuff that we do, that Grishma amazingly presented to us in the yesterday's panel, for those of you who are there, I sort of adapted it to the PPT. We all did, in a sense. Now, this is something which is which I did in Symbiosis. This is for a creative writing class. So this was sort of a challenge. Now, to give a little background, I was teaching creative writing to the students, undergraduate first year and second year students of Symbiosis School of Photography. Now, this is an undergraduate degree, but this is more like a technical training degree. So the students who were coming here had very little interest and very little exposure to the reading writing process. They are in other classes also that they do. They don't really, read and write in the traditional sense, much at least. So what happened is that alongside this, there was this entire pandemic going on, and in the online situation, what happened? A lot of students started working full time, because a lot of them were they already had done some other work, and they were professional photographers who had come for an advanced degree kind of a thing, even though it's not advanced, but still. So a lot of them were working. So many people would not turn up in class, and generally in a class of 40 to 50 students, I would have, like, say 15 to 20 students who are actually present. The rest of them would be there, but their mics and videos will be off. Their phones will basically be in their pocket while they will be doing their office work. So there was absolutely no way I could drive engagement from them or make them listen to what I had to say. So what that resulted in is that this was the third assignment that I gave them. The two assignments which I had given, none of them submitted it, and they said that, we can get a backlog, we'll do the backlog later. So
sorry, you have 3 more minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, Madhura. Yeah. So in that context, I wanted to ensure that they attended this. They did all the things in the assignment. So what I did was, it was like a scaffolding kind of a thing. So the first asked them to write 3 sentences about whatever they knew about a butterfly. Again, this is something which is inspired by one exercise that Ananya did with us. Then I asked them to give them a picture of a butterfly, and I said, visually describe it. Then I gave them a poem on butterfly laughter by Catherine Mansfield. We read it together in the class, and then we discussed it, and I asked them to write a little bit on it. Then I gave them a section from an essay, a scientific essay, which we also did in Krea. And with that, I had made some comprehension questions. And then I did a question where I asked them to sort of, indulge in nostalgia and write 10 minutes about what they remember of a butterfly. And then I told them that, list out as many words as possible when it comes to what comes to your mind when you think about a butterfly. They gave all these words, and with all the words, I told them, now using these words, write about anything other than a butterfly. So and also there were these images which I asked them to connect, and they booked like 4 hours of time. They sat with me and they did all of these things. And then finally I gave them a question saying that, now that you have gone through all of the materials and we have read and sort of researched with the butterfly for so long, write a piece in any genre taught in class using all the materials you have collected. So this was how I used the PPT for the assessment. And just to sum it up, some of the things that the PPTs can be used in online classroom for is, of course, focused reading, interconnectedness, participation, review of students' work, student assessment, also making handouts. That is always there, even in an offline situation. And another thing is, some of the observations on things that helped is that instead of glossing over, as Tuft says, instead of glossing over, we were actually paying focused attention. So putting chunk of text or crowding the PPT need not necessarily always be bad, as the online use of PPT has shown us. And another observation, which is entirely at the level of observation, I don't have any evidence to support it, is that I felt that this kind of a design of the PPT, which is like, in the white, there are this elements, a lot of elements there, which can be moved around. I felt the visual flexibility sort of provided a safe space within the screen, which allowed us to probably, that everything was not just concrete and written in block. It's something that can be moved around. So I think that somewhere connected with the students, which I saw both in academic writing as well as creative writing. And finally, I think, as I also mentioned in the beginning, just to go back to that, it is the intimacy of the private screen which allowed this. And when they were finally downloaded, since this thing is called online and downloadable, the PPT is no longer just a written production of what the teacher has said, but it's a collaborative creation of the entire class. And this sort of creates a certain sense of ownership of the material for the students, and that leads to democratization of the classroom, socialization in online space. And I'm specifically using these words because these came up in yesterday's session. I think Deepthi also mentioned some of them in her work. So I just want to leave you with 2 questions, Madhura, if I have time. One is that, will these strategies work offline? If not, how do we adapt back to the offline mode? Second is a more interwoven thought following the Krea tradition. Can we think of the efficacy of the PPTs online in terms of some changed brain wiring, which gives us the patience to binge watch Netflix for hours on our mobile screen, yet feel distracted when a screening is going on in a cinema hall or a classroom? So I think these are the 2 questions with which I would like to end my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Pritha, for that wonderful presentation. And I'm glad that you end with questions actually for us, which I think we'll give time to discuss, at the end of it. But also, yes, I think a much needed reclaiming of the much maligned PPT, right? I think, and I mean, there's lots to say about this, but I will save all this for the end of all the presentations. I want us to, but thank you.